I watched from 800 miles away, well, not literally, but in my mind I could see it all happening. The chaos, the confusion, the anger. Because at exactly 9 a.m., Patricia's relatives were walking into a mansion expecting a feast and finding absolutely nothing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how this whole thing fell apart for them. It was 9 a.m. when the first car pulled up. Aunt Beverly arrived in her silver Mercedes, stepping out in her expensive coat and pearl necklace. She walked up to the front door, like she owned the place, already preparing her usual list of complaints. Uncle Raymond came next, his loud voice carrying across the driveway before he even reached the door. "This better be worth the 2-hour drive, Patricia." Then Cousin Whitney pulled up, phone already in her hand, filming herself. "Good morning, everyone. Coming to you live from Aunt Patricia's mansion for another amazing family breakfast." They all walked inside, chatting and laughing, completely unaware of what they were about to find. Patricia stood in the foyer in her silk robe, her smile frozen on her face. She kept glancing toward the kitchen, expecting to smell bacon and fresh coffee. But there was nothing, just silence. "Olivia must be running behind," she said, her voice tight. "Greg, go check on your wife." Greg came down the stairs, annoyed at being woken up so early. "She's probably in the kitchen, Mother. You know how she is." But when Patricia walked into the kitchen, she stopped so suddenly that Aunt Beverly almost crashed into her back. The kitchen was empty. Not just empty of food, empty of everything. No pots on the stove, no ingredients on the counter, no mixing bowls in the sink. The oven was cold. The coffee maker was off. What is this?" Patricia whispered. Uncle Raymond pushed past her. "Where's the food, Patricia? You said breakfast at 8 a.m. "There must be some mistake," Patricia said, her voice getting higher. "Olivia! Olivia!" She screamed my name through the house. No answer. Greg pulled out his phone and called me. It rang once, then went to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. Again and again and again. "She's not answering," he said, confused. Cousin Whitney was filming everything now, her eyes wide with excitement. This was better than any scripted drama. "You guys, something crazy is happening right now," she whispered to her phone. Patricia's hands were shaking. "Check the whole house. Now." Greg ran upstairs while Patricia searched the first floor. Aunt Beverly stood in the kitchen, already complaining. "I drove 2 hours for this. Where is that girl?" More relatives kept arriving. Patricia's friends, her cousins, people I'd served at a dozen parties before. They all walked in, expecting food, and found chaos instead. Greg burst into our bedroom and his heart must have dropped. The closet door was wide open. My side was completely empty. Just bare hangers and empty shelves. He pulled open the dresser drawers. Nothing. He ran to the bathroom. My toothbrush was gone. My shampoo was gone. Even the little bottle of perfume I kept on the counter gone. "Mother!" he yelled. "Mother!" Patricia came running up the stairs, her silk robe flying behind her. "What? What is it?" "Her things. Everything. It's all gone." They stood there staring at the empty closet. That's when Greg noticed something on my nightstand. A small envelope with his name on it. His hands shook as he picked it up and pulled out a single piece of paper. "I'm done, Olivia." 3 words. That's all I gave them. "What does this mean?" Greg said, his voice cracking. "Where is she?" Patricia grabbed the note from him. She read it over and over, like the words would change if she looked long enough. "She left," Patricia said slowly. "That ungrateful little, she actually left." Downstairs, the relatives were getting louder. Uncle Raymond was shouting about wasting his morning. Cousin Whitney was live-streaming the whole disaster to thousands of people. Someone said they were going to leave and find a restaurant. Greg kept calling my phone. 20 times. 30 times. Each time, straight to voicemail. Patricia went through the house like a detective, searching for clues. She checked the garage. My old car was still there. I'd taken a taxi. She checked the office. My important documents were gone. Birth certificate, passport, everything. She opened my jewelry box on the dresser. Empty. This wasn't sudden, Patricia said, her voice cold. She planned this. Greg sat on the bed, staring at my note. But why? I gave her everything. This house, this life. You gave her work, Aunt Beverly said from the doorway. She'd come upstairs to see what was happening. You treated her like a maid. What did you expect? Patricia spun around. Stay out of this, Beverly. But the truth was hanging in the air now, impossible to ignore. Downstairs, people were leaving. Angry, hungry, and confused. Cousin Whitney's video was already getting thousands of views. The comments were brutal. Where's the wife? Did she finally escape? Good for her. Patricia stood in the empty kitchen, surrounded by relatives demanding answers she didn't have. Greg sat upstairs, holding a note he didn't understand. And me? At that exact moment, I was stepping off a plane 800 miles away, breathing free air for the first time in 3 years. But they didn't know that yet. Let me take you back to where this really started. Back to last night, when Patricia walked into my room and changed everything. 3 years ago, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. Greg seemed perfect when we were dating. He brought me flowers every Friday. He opened doors for me. He laughed at my jokes and told me I was beautiful every single day. We got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse. Nothing fancy, but I didn't care. I loved him. Or at least I loved who I thought he was. 2 weeks after our wedding, everything changed. I woke up one morning to find Patricia sitting at our kitchen table, not visiting, sitting there with 3 suitcases beside her. Good morning, Olivia, she said, sipping coffee from my favorite mug. I've decided to move in for a while. Greg needs me here. I looked at Greg, waiting for him to say something. He just shrugged. It's temporary, Olivia. Just until you learn how things work. That temporary stay never ended. The first morning Patricia was there. She woke me up at 5 a.m. by yanking the blankets off our bed. A proper wife doesn't sleep while her family needs breakfast, she said. Get up. I stumbled to the kitchen, half asleep, and started making eggs and toast. Patricia stood behind me the whole time, criticizing everything. The eggs are too runny. The toast is too dark. Is this the best you can do? Greg ate his breakfast without looking at me. When I sat down to eat, Patricia cleared my plate before I could take a bite. You can eat after the kitchen is clean, she said. That became my life. Every single day. I had to wake up at 5 a.m. to make breakfast. Then I cleaned the entire 12-bedroom mansion by myself. Patricia refused to hire help. Why waste money when we have you? She said. By the end of the first month, my hands were raw from scrubbing floors. I'd lost 8 pounds because I barely had time to eat. I fell asleep every night too exhausted to even cry. Greg noticed. He had to notice. But he said nothing. One evening, about 3 months after Patricia moved in, I burned the roast for dinner. I'd been cleaning all day and lost track of time. The meat came out dry and tough. Patricia took one bite and spit it onto her plate. This is disgusting, she said. She picked up the entire platter and threw it on the floor. The plate shattered. Gravy splattered across the white tiles. Pieces of meat scattered everywhere. Clean it up, she ordered, and maybe next time you'll pay attention. I got on my hands and knees and cleaned while they ordered takeout. Greg stepped over me to get to the door when the delivery arrived. He didn't even ask if I was okay. That night, I cried myself to sleep. Greg heard me. He rolled over and said, "Can you keep it down? Some of us have work in the morning." The parties started 6 months into our marriage. Patricia threw them twice a month, sometimes more. She invited 20 or 30 people, all her wealthy friends and relatives. And I had to do everything: cooking, serving, cleaning, by myself. I remember the first big party. I cooked for 12 hours straight. My feet were swollen. My back ached. I carried trays of food to the dining room where Patricia's friends sat in their expensive dresses, talking about their vacations and jewelry. Not one of them said thank you. To them, I was invisible. Just the help. Cousin Whitney was the worst. She started coming to every party with her phone out, filming everything. She'd point the camera at me while I was serving food and make little comments. "Look at Olivia, everyone, working so hard. Isn't she just the perfect little housewife?" Her followers loved it. They'd leave comments calling me names, making fun of my clothes, laughing at how exhausted I looked. She showed me the comments once, smiling like it was all a big joke. I asked Greg to make her stop. He said I was being too sensitive. One party was worse than all the others. Patricia had invited some important business partners of Greg's. She wanted everything perfect. I spent 2 days preparing. During dinner, I was carrying a tray of soup bowls. I was so tired I could barely see straight. My hands were shaking. I tripped on the edge of the rug. The tray went flying. Hot soup splashed across the tablecloth and onto one woman's dress. Everyone went silent. Patricia stood up slowly. Her face was red with rage. "You clumsy, stupid girl," she said, her voice shaking. "You've embarrassed this family for the last time." She grabbed a glass of wine from the table and threw it at my feet. The glass shattered. Wine soaked into my shoes. "Get out of my sight," she hissed. I ran to the kitchen and locked myself in the pantry. I could hear them laughing in the dining room. Greg was apologizing to his business partners, making excuses for me. I sat on the floor of that pantry for 2 hours while they finished their meal. Nobody came to check on me, not even my husband. That night, after everyone left and the house was finally quiet, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by dirty dishes. It was 2 a.m. My whole body hurt. I looked at my phone and saw a notification, a text from Helen, my college roommate. She sent me a funny meme with a message. "Hope you're doing well, miss you." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Can I call you tomorrow? I need to talk." She responded immediately, "Of course, any time. Are you okay?" I wasn't okay. I hadn't been okay for a very long time. But I didn't know it yet that simple text message was the first step toward my freedom. The next morning, I called Helen. And 6 months later, I would be standing in an airport at 3 a.m., finally escaping the nightmare my life had become. But first, I had to survive 6 more months of hell. The day after I texted Helen, I called her while Patricia and Greg were out shopping. My hands shook as I dialed her number. "Olivia." Helen's voice was bright and cheerful. "I've missed you so much. How's married life?" I opened my mouth to say the lie I'd been telling everyone. That everything was fine, that I was happy. But instead, I started crying. "Helen, I need help. I need to get out of here." We talked for 2 hours. I told her everything. Helen listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said something that changed everything. "Start planning. Today, right now. I'll help you." That's when the secret began. The first thing I needed was my important documents: birth certificate, social security card, passport. Greg kept everything locked in his office safe. He said it was for security purposes, but I knew it was about control. It took me 3 weeks to figure out the combination. I watched him open it one morning when he thought I was downstairs. 4 numbers: 7, 2, 5, 8. His mother's birthday. One afternoon when they were both gone, I opened that safe with trembling fingers. Inside were stacks of papers, some cash, and a folder with my name on it. I grabbed my documents and hid them in a tampon box under the bathroom sink. Greg would never look there. Next, I needed money. That was harder. Greg controlled all our bank accounts. I had a debit card, but he checked every purchase. If I spent $5 at a coffee shop, he'd ask me about it. "Why are you wasting money?" he'd say. "We have coffee at home." Then I remembered something. Before I got married, I had my own savings account from my old job at the library. I hadn't touched it in years. I dug through some old boxes in the basement and found the account information. One day, I told Patricia I needed to go to the pharmacy for women's products. She wrinkled her nose and waved me away. I drove to the bank instead. The account was still active. $8,342. Money I'd saved over 5 years of working. Money Greg didn't know existed. I sat in that bank parking lot and cried with relief. But I couldn't just withdraw it all. That would be suspicious. So every week, I took out $200 in cash. I told the bank teller I was saving up to surprise my husband with a gift. She smiled and said how sweet I was. I hid the cash in different places. Some in that tampon box. Some inside an old book on the highest shelf. Some in the lining of my winter coat. Helen helped me open a new bank account in her state. She put her address on it. I slowly transferred money there, bit by bit, making each transfer look like a payment for online shopping. Then I started selling my jewelry. I didn't have much. A pearl necklace my grandmother gave me, some gold earrings from my wedding, a bracelet Greg bought me for our first anniversary back when he still pretended to care. I listed them on websites for selling used jewelry. I used Helen's address for shipping. Every piece I sold, I told Patricia I'd lost it. "You lost your pearl necklace?" Patricia had said, suspicious. "How careless." "I'm so sorry," I said, keeping my eyes down. "I must have left it somewhere." She called me stupid and irresponsible, but she believed me. Why wouldn't she? In her mind, I was too dumb to plan anything. I made $3,000 selling everything. Combined with my savings, I had over $11,000. Enough to start over. Helen researched divorce lawyers in her state. She found one named Mrs. Anderson who specialized in cases like mine. Helen even paid for the first consultation using her own credit card. I called Mrs. Anderson from the grocery store parking lot one afternoon. "Can you help me?" I asked. My voice barely a whisper. "Yes," she said firmly, "and I'm going to make sure you get out safely." She explained everything. I'd need to establish residency in Helen's state first. That meant physically being there. Then we could file for divorce. Since I wasn't asking for much, just my freedom, it should be relatively quick. "Do you have a plan for leaving?" Mrs. Anderson asked. "Not yet," I admitted. "Then make one. And when you're ready to go, don't tell anyone. Not your husband, not your mother-in-law. Just leave." For the next 4 months, I kept playing my role, the obedient wife, the silent servant. I woke up at 5 a.m. I cooked and cleaned. I endured Patricia's insults and Greg's coldness. But inside, I was counting down. I researched bus tickets and plane tickets. I figured out which airport was farthest from anyone who might recognize me. I practiced packing my suitcase in under 10 minutes, so I'd be ready when the moment came. Helen sent me a key to her apartment. "Whenever you're ready," she texted. "Your room is waiting." The hardest part was acting normal, while my heart was screaming to run. Every time Patricia threw a dish at me or Greg ignored me, I wanted to tell them I was leaving. I wanted to see their faces when they realized they couldn't control me anymore. But Mrs. Anderson's words kept me quiet. "Don't tell anyone. Just leave." Then, 2 months ago, Patricia announced she was planning the biggest party yet. "It's going to be spectacular," she said, her eyes gleaming. "All of our extended family, 30 people at least. I want you to prepare a breakfast feast that will impress everyone." She looked at me with that cruel smile she always wore. "This is your chance to finally prove you're worthy of being part of this family. Olivia, don't disappoint us." Greg nodded. "Mother's right. You need to show everyone you can handle responsibility." I smiled and nodded like always. But that night, I texted Helen. "I know when I'm leaving." She responded immediately. "When?" "The morning of Patricia's party. They'll never see it coming." Helen sent back a single word. "Perfect." I went online and booked a plane ticket, one way, departing at 4 a.m. on the morning of the party. I used my secret bank account to pay for it. Then I waited. 2 months of waking up early, cooking meals, scrubbing floors, and smiling through the abuse. But I had a secret now. An escape date. A future. Every night, I crossed another day off my mental calendar. 60 days. 45 days. 30 days. 15 days. Until finally, it was the night before the party. The night Patricia handed me that guest list and told me to start cooking at 4 a.m. The night Greg told me not to mess it up again. The night I smiled and nodded for the very last time. It was 10 p.m. when Patricia came to my room. She didn't knock. She never did. The door just swung open, and there she stood in her silk nightgown, looking down at me like I was dirt on her expensive shoes. In her hand was a long piece of paper covered in names written in her perfect handwriting. "Here's the guest list for tomorrow," she said, walking over and shoving it into my hands. 30 people. I want a full breakfast spread, ready by 8 a.m. sharp. I looked down at the paper. Aunt Beverly, Uncle Raymond, Cousin Whitney. Names and names of people who'd spent years watching me be humiliated and said nothing. I want pancakes, waffles, 3 different types of eggs, scrambled, fried, and poached, bacon, sausages, breakfast, potatoes, fresh fruit platters arranged beautifully, assorted pastries, and freshly squeezed orange juice. Not the bottled garbage. Fresh. She crossed her arms. "This is the most important party I've ever thrown, Olivia. Everyone will be watching you. Everyone will be judging this family based on what you serve." I nodded, my face blank. "Start cooking at 4 a.m., Patricia commanded. "That should give you enough time. And I want the dining room decorated too. Flowers on the table, the good china, everything perfect." Greg appeared in the doorway behind his mother. He was wearing his expensive pajamas, the ones I'd hand-washed just yesterday. He looked at me with those cold eyes that used to pretend to love me. "And don't mess it up again," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "Remember what happened at the last party? You embarrassed me in front of important people." He was talking about the soup incident, the one where Patricia threw wine at my feet and called me stupid in front of everyone. In his mind, that was my fault. My embarrassment, not theirs. I looked at both of them standing there, Patricia with her cruel smile, Greg with his entitled expression. 2 people who'd spent 3 years destroying me piece by piece. And I smiled. "Of course," I said softly. "I'll make sure everything is perfect." Patricia studied my face like she was looking for defiance. But I'd gotten good at hiding my feelings. She saw nothing. "Good," she said. "Don't disappoint me, Olivia. This is your chance to prove you're not completely worthless." They left, closing the door behind them. I heard their footsteps going down the hallway. Patricia's voice drifted back, talking to Greg about how she hoped I wouldn't ruin everything, like I always did. I sat on my bed holding that guest list. For a moment, just a moment, I let myself imagine doing what they wanted. Waking up at 4 a.m., cooking for hours, serving people who hated me, smiling while they criticized everything. Then I looked at my phone. 10:15 p.m. My flight was in less than 6 hours. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My mind was racing with everything that needed to happen. I sat on my bed fully dressed, going through my mental checklist over and over. At midnight, I allowed myself to walk through the mansion one last time. I moved quietly through the dark hallways, my footsteps silent on the thick carpet. I walked past the dining room, where I'd served hundreds of meals to people who never thanked me. Past the living room, where Patricia's friends had laughed at me. Past Greg's office, where he'd yelled at me for spending money on groceries. I stopped in front of our wedding photo hanging in the hallway. Greg and I were smiling. I looked so happy, so naive. I didn't know then that the man beside me would turn into a stranger who treated me like his servant. I took the photo off the wall and left it face down on the hall table. At 1 a.m., I went to the bathroom and took a long, hot shower. I washed my hair slowly, enjoying the water, the warmth, the quiet. This was the last time I'd shower in this house. The last time I'd stand in this bathroom that I'd scrubbed clean 1,000 times. I dried off and put on comfortable clothes. Jeans, a sweater, my good walking shoes. I pulled my hair into a simple ponytail. At 2 a.m., I did a final check of my small suitcase. 1 week of clothes. My documents. The emergency cash I'd hidden. My phone charger. A photo of my parents who'd passed away years ago. That was it. 3 years of marriage fit into one small suitcase. Everything else, the clothes Greg bought me, the jewelry, the expensive things I left behind, I didn't want any of it. Those things felt like chains. At 2:30 a.m., I made my bed one last time. I smoothed the blankets perfectly, the way Patricia had taught me. I fluffed the pillows. I made everything look neat and untouched. Then I walked downstairs with my suitcase, moving like a ghost through the dark house. The kitchen was cold and empty. I turned on one small light over the sink. I pulled out a piece of paper and a pen from the drawer. My hand was steady as I wrote 3 simple words. I'm done. Olivia. I left the note in the center of the kitchen counter where they'd find it first thing in the morning, right where Patricia expected to find platters of food and fresh flowers. I looked around the kitchen one last time, at the stove where I'd burned my hands, at the sink where I'd washed dishes until my fingers bled, at the floor where Patricia had thrown food at my feet. I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, just emptiness. At 2:45 a.m., I checked my phone. The taxi I'd ordered was 15 minutes away. I put on my winter coat. It was early November, and the mornings were cold. I grabbed my suitcase and walked to the front door. My hand touched the doorknob. This was it, the moment I'd been planning for 6 months. The moment that would change everything. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in, hitting my face, waking up every sense in my body. The taxi's headlights appeared at the end of the long driveway at exactly 3 a.m. I stepped outside, pulling my suitcase behind me. The wheels made a soft sound on the brick walkway. I didn't look back at the mansion. Not once. I walked down that driveway like I was walking toward freedom. Because I was. The taxi driver got out and helped me put my suitcase in the trunk. He was an older man with kind eyes. Airport? He asked. Yes, I said. And please drive fast. I climbed into the back seat and closed the door. The taxi pulled away from the mansion, and I watched through the rear window as it got smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. I turned around in my seat and faced forward, toward the airport, toward Helen City, toward my new life. I pulled out my phone and sent Helen a text. I'm on my way. She responded immediately, even though it was 3 a.m. I'm so proud of you. See you soon. At 3:45 a.m., I walked into the airport. It was quiet, just a few travelers scattered around. I checked in for my flight, went through security, and sat at the gate. At 4 a.m., the exact time Patricia expected me to start cooking, I boarded the plane. I found my window seat and buckled in. As the plane started to taxi down the runway, I thought about what was happening back at the mansion. Greg was probably still sleeping. Patricia was probably dreaming about her perfect party. Neither of them had any idea I was gone. The plane lifted off the ground, and I felt my stomach drop. But it wasn't fear, it was relief. I was free. At 9 a.m., I was somewhere over Kansas when Patricia's world started falling apart. I didn't see it happen, but Helen told me later she watched the whole thing unfold on Cousin Whitney's social media livestream. The relatives had started arriving right on schedule. Aunt Beverly pulled up first in her silver Mercedes, already complaining about the traffic. Uncle Raymond came next, talking loudly on his phone about some business deal. Cousin Whitney arrived with her camera ready, filming her entrance for her thousands of followers. Good morning, beautiful people. I'm here at Aunt Patricia's mansion for what she promised would be the most amazing breakfast spread ever. Let's go see what Olivia made for us today. They all walked through the front door, expecting the smell of bacon and coffee. Instead, they got silence. Patricia was standing in the foyer wearing her silk robe, her smile already looking strained. She kept glancing toward the kitchen, waiting to hear the sounds of me finishing up the meal, but there was nothing. Patricia, where's the food? Aunt Beverly asked, setting down her designer purse. I'm starving. It's coming, Patricia said, but her voice wavered. Olivia must be finishing the final touches. Greg came down the stairs, still in his pajamas. He looked confused. Why is everyone here so early? It's 9 a.m., Greg, Uncle Raymond boomed. Your mother said breakfast at 8. We're already late. Patricia's face went pale. She rushed to the kitchen, her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. The relatives followed, curious now. The kitchen was completely empty. No food. No dishes. No pots on the stove. The oven was cold. The counters were bare except for one small piece of white paper sitting in the center. Patricia stopped so fast that Aunt Beverly almost crashed into her. "What is this?" Patricia whispered. "Where's Olivia?" Greg asked, looking around like I might jump out from behind the refrigerator. Uncle Raymond pushed past everyone and stared at the empty kitchen. "Are you kidding me? I drove 2 hours for this." Cousin Whitney had her phone out, filming everything. "Guys, something weird is happening. There's literally no food anywhere." Patricia grabbed the piece of paper from the counter. Her hands were shaking as she read it. 3 words that made her face turn bright red. "I'm done, Olivia." "What does that mean?" Greg took the note from her. He read it once, twice, 3 times like the words would magically change. "Where is she?" Patricia's voice was rising. "Olivia! Olivia! Get out here right now!" Her screams echoed through the empty house. No answer. Greg pulled out his phone and called me. It went straight to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. Again and again. The same result. "She's not answering," he said, his voice cracking with panic. More relatives were arriving. Patricia's friends walked in wearing their expensive clothes, expecting mimosas and eggs Benedict. Instead, they found chaos. "Patricia, what's going on?" one of her friends asked. "There's been a delay," Patricia stammered. "A small problem." Cousin Whitney was still filming, narrating everything. "So apparently, the wife just disappeared and there's no breakfast. This is insane." Her phone was buzzing with comments from her followers. Hundreds of people were watching this disaster unfold in real time. Aunt Beverly walked upstairs without asking permission. She was nosy and wanted to find out what was really happening. She opened the bedroom door and gasped, "Patricia, you need to see this." Everyone rushed upstairs. Greg got there first and stopped dead in the doorway. The closet was empty. My side was completely bare, just empty hangers swinging slightly from the open door. The dresser drawers were pulled open, every single one empty. Patricia pushed past Greg and ran to the bathroom. My toothbrush was gone. My shampoo was gone. My makeup was gone. She opened the jewelry box on the dresser. Empty. "She took everything," Patricia said slowly. "She planned this." Greg was standing there in shock, staring at the empty closet like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. But why? I gave her everything. This house. This life." "You gave her work," Aunt Beverly said sharply. "You treated her like a servant, Greg. What did you expect?" "Shut up, Beverly," Patricia snapped. "This is not the time." But it was the time. The truth was right there in that empty closet, in those bare drawers, in that simple 3-word note. Downstairs, Uncle Raymond was yelling, "I'm leaving! This is ridiculous! You invite people to breakfast and don't even have coffee." Other relatives started leaving too. They were angry, embarrassed, confused. Some of Patricia's wealthy friends were whispering to each other, and I knew what they were saying. They were gossiping about how Patricia couldn't even control her own daughter-in-law. Cousin Whitney's livestream had over 5,000 viewers now. The comments were brutal. "Good for her for leaving. They probably treated her terribly. I hope she never comes back. This is what happens when you treat people like slaves." Patricia saw the comments over Whitney's shoulder and her face turned purple with rage. "Turn that camera off. Now." But Whitney didn't. This was the best content she'd ever gotten. Her followers were eating it up. Greg was calling me over and over. 20 times, 30 times, 40 times. Each call going straight to voicemail because I'd turned off my phone the second I boarded the plane. He started texting. "Where are you? This isn't funny, Olivia. Call me back right now. We need to talk about this. You can't just leave." But I could. And I did. Patricia was tearing through the house looking for clues. She checked the garage, my old car was still there. She checked the office safe, my documents were gone. She went through every room, opening drawers and closets, trying to find something that would tell her where I went. She found nothing. I'd been too careful. "We need to call the police," Patricia said. "And tell them what?" Aunt Beverly asked. "That a grown woman left her own house? They'll laugh at you." Greg sat down on our bed, still holding my note. He looked lost, confused. like his whole world had just crumbled and he didn't understand why. "She left me," he said quietly. "She actually left me." Downstairs, the few relatives who remained were raiding the refrigerator, making their own food. They were gossiping loudly about the whole situation. Cousin Whitney was still streaming. Her video had gone viral. Thousands of people were watching, commenting, sharing. Patricia finally came downstairs and saw Whitney's phone. She saw the view count, the comments, the shares. Her perfect reputation was being destroyed in real time. "Everyone out," Patricia said, her voice shaking. "Get out of my house." The remaining relatives scrambled to leave. Within minutes, the mansion was empty except for Patricia and Greg. They stood in that empty kitchen, surrounded by the silence I'd left behind. And 800 miles away, my plane was landing. Helen was waiting for me at the airport with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. I was free. The plane touched down at 11 a.m. I grabbed my small suitcase from the overhead bin and walked through the airport like I was floating. Everything looked brighter. The fluorescent lights didn't seem harsh. The crowds didn't feel overwhelming. Even the airport coffee smelled like freedom. Helen was waiting at arrivals with a huge sign that said, "New Beginnings" in bright pink letters. When I saw her, something inside me broke open. I dropped my suitcase and ran to her. We hugged so tight I could barely breathe, and then I started crying. Not sad tears, relief tears. 3 years of tears I'd been holding back. "You did it," Helen whispered in my ear. "You actually did it. I'm so proud of you." We stood there in the middle of the airport, holding each other while travelers walked around us. I didn't care who was watching. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't have to hide how I felt. Helen drove me to her apartment, talking the whole way about everything we'd do together. Get me a job. Find me my own place eventually. Help me start over. I mostly listened, watching the unfamiliar city pass by the window. This was my new home now. Her apartment was small but cozy. She'd set up the guest bedroom for me, with fresh sheets and flowers on the nightstand. "It's not much," she said, "but it's yours for as long as you need it." I sat on the bed and touched the soft blanket. It's perfect. That first week, I didn't do much. I slept, I ate when I wanted to eat. I took long showers without anyone pounding on the door telling me to hurry up. I wore comfortable clothes and didn't style my hair. Helen let me just exist without any pressure. But back at the mansion, things were getting worse for them. Helen showed me Cousin Whitney's viral video. It had over 200,000 views. The comments section was full of people supporting me, calling out Patricia and Greg for how they must have treated me. The wife finally escaped. I hope she never goes back to these horrible people. Notice how the husband just stands there. He doesn't even seem to care. Whitney had actually done me a favor by filming everything. Now the whole world could see the chaos I'd left behind. On day 3, Greg finally sent me an email. Not a text. An actual long email. Helen handed me her laptop. "You don't have to read it if you're not ready." But I was ready. I opened it and started reading. "Olivia, I don't understand why you left. I gave you everything. A beautiful home, financial security, a good life. Why wasn't that enough? My mother is devastated. She keeps asking what she did wrong. The family is embarrassed. Cousin Whitney's video has made us look terrible. People are saying awful things about us online. You need to come back so we can fix this. We can go to counseling if that's what you want. We can talk about whatever is bothering you. Just come home. This is where you belong. You're my wife. You made a commitment. You can't just walk away from that. Please call me. We need to discuss this like adults." I read it twice. Then I started writing my response. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I felt completely calm as I typed. "Greg, I'm not coming back, ever. Let me explain why, since you say you don't understand. For 3 years, your mother has lived in our house and treated me like her personal servant. She woke me up at 5 a.m. every single day. She made me cook and clean a 12-bedroom mansion by myself. She threw food at my feet when she didn't like how I prepared it. She called me stupid, worthless, and useless almost every day. And you stood there and watched. You never defended me. Not once. You told me I was embarrassing you. You sided with her every single time. You treated me like a maid, not a wife. The beautiful home you gave me was a prison. The financial security meant nothing, because you controlled every dollar I spent. The good life you're talking about was only good for you and your mother. I was miserable every single day. I cried myself to sleep every night. And you never noticed. Or maybe you did notice and you just didn't care. I filed for divorce. The papers will be served to you next week. I'm not asking for the house or your money. I don't want anything from you except my freedom. Don't contact me again. My lawyer will handle everything from now on. I hope your mother enjoys cooking for her own parties from now on. Goodbye, Greg. I hit send before I could second guess myself. Helen read it over my shoulder and squeezed my hand. Good for you. 2 hours later, Greg responded, just one line. You can't do this. I wrote back even faster. Watch me. Then I blocked his email address. The next day, I got a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello, Olivia. It was Patricia's voice. Cold and sharp as always. This is ridiculous. You need to come back immediately and fix the mess you've created. I'd imagined this conversation 100 times. In my mind, I always had this perfect speech prepared. Something powerful and dramatic that would make her understand exactly how much she'd hurt me. But when the moment actually came, I didn't need a speech. No, I said simply. Excuse me? No, I'm not coming back. I'm not fixing anything. I'm done. You ungrateful little. I hung up. Then I blocked her number too. Helen was staring at me with wide eyes. Did you just hang up on Patricia? I did. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. I actually did. We both started laughing. And then I was crying again. But this time it was happy tears mixed with relief and disbelief that I'd actually stood up to her. A week after I left, the divorce papers were officially served. Greg's lawyer called Mrs. Anderson, trying to negotiate. Mrs. Anderson called me. He wants to contest the divorce. He's claiming you abandoned the marriage without cause. What does that mean? It means he's going to try to make this difficult. But since you're not asking for any assets or alimony, we have a strong case. He's just angry and trying to maintain control. How long will this take? Could be a few months, maybe longer if he keeps fighting. Can you handle that? I thought about it. A few months of paperwork versus a lifetime of being treated like garbage. I can handle it, I said. 2 weeks after I left, Helen helped me get a job at a bookstore 3 blocks from her apartment. It was a small independent shop that smelled like old paper and coffee. The owner was a kind woman named Dorothy, who didn't ask too many questions about my past. The work was simple: organizing shelves, helping customers find books, running the register. The pay was minimum wage, which was less money than I'd ever made. But nobody yelled at me. Nobody threw things at me. Nobody called me worthless. On my first day, a customer thanked me for helping her find a book for her daughter. Such a small thing. But I almost cried because I couldn't remember the last time someone had thanked me for anything. 2 weeks turned into a month. Then 2 months. My new life started feeling less like a dream and more like reality. Every morning, I woke up whenever I wanted. Some days that was 6 a.m. because I actually felt rested. Other days it was 9 a.m. because I could. Nobody barged into my room with demands. Nobody told me I was lazy for sleeping past dawn. I made my own breakfast. Simple things. Toast with butter. Scrambled eggs cooked exactly how I liked them. Coffee that I drank while it was still hot, instead of reheating it 3 times because I kept getting interrupted. The bookstore became my sanctuary. Dorothy taught me about rare books and first editions. She let me recommend books to customers. She valued my opinions. One regular customer started asking specifically for me because she trusted my suggestions. You really know books, she told me one afternoon. Have you always worked in bookstores? No, I said. This is new for me, but I've always loved reading. She smiled. Well, you're a natural. Such a simple compliment. but it made me feel more valuable than 3 years of living in a mansion ever had. Helen and I fell into an easy rhythm. We cooked dinner together most nights, trying new recipes and laughing when things turned out terrible. We watched movies until midnight. We talked about everything and nothing. She never pushed me to talk about Greg or Patricia, but sometimes I needed to. "Do you think I'm a bad person for leaving?" I asked one night. Helen looked at me like I was crazy. "Olivia, you're the strongest person I know. You saved yourself. That's not bad, that's survival." Greg kept trying to contact me despite the blocks. He created new email addresses. He sent messages through social media. He even had his lawyer send letters to Mrs. Anderson's office. All of them said basically the same thing. "Come back. We can fix this. You're being unreasonable. Think about what you're throwing away." Mrs. Anderson handled everything. "Don't respond to any of it," she advised. "He's trying to provoke you into engaging. Just let me deal with him." The divorce moved slowly through the system. Greg contested everything, trying to drag it out. His lawyer argued that I'd abandoned the marriage, that I hadn't tried counseling, that I was being impulsive. Mrs. Anderson fought back with facts. I'd been treated as unpaid household labor. I'd been verbally abused. I had every right to leave an unhealthy situation. 3 months after I left, something unexpected happened. I was working at the bookstore when a man came in looking for a birthday gift for his mother. He was maybe 30, with kind eyes and an easy smile. He asked for help finding something, and we spent 20 minutes talking about different books. "You really love this," he said, watching me talk about my favorite novels. "I do," I admitted. "Books saved me in a lot of ways." He bought 3 books and left. Then he came back the next week, and the week after that. Always friendly, always asking for recommendations, always staying to chat a little longer each time. His name was Thomas. He was a teacher at the elementary school nearby. He liked hiking and cooking, and terrible puns that made me laugh despite myself. The 4th time he came in, he asked if I'd like to get coffee sometime. I froze. I was still married. Technically. Even though I hadn't seen Greg in months. Even though the divorce was processing. "I can't," I said quietly. "I'm sorry. It's complicated." "That's okay," Thomas said, not pushing. "But if it ever becomes uncomplicated, I'd still like to buy you that coffee." He smiled and left, and I stood there feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The possibility that maybe someday I could trust someone again. That night, I checked my email and found a message from Mrs. Anderson. "Good news. Greg has agreed to settle. He'll sign the divorce papers if you waive any future claims to assets. I know you were planning to do that anyway, but he's framing it like he's being generous. Do you want to accept?" I wrote back immediately. "Yes. Whatever it takes to end this." A week later, the papers were signed. Just like that, I was no longer Olivia Peterson, Greg's wife. I was just Olivia Martinez again, the person I was before I met him. Helen took me out to celebrate. We went to a nice restaurant, nothing fancy, but nicer than anywhere I'd been in months. We ordered appetizers and dessert, and stayed for hours talking and laughing. "To new beginnings," Helen said, raising her glass. "To freedom," I added. We clinked glasses, and I felt lighter than I had in 3 years. The next day at work, Thomas came in again. He browsed the shelves for a while, before coming to the counter with a book about hiking trails. "Find everything okay?" I asked. "I did." He paused. "Is it still complicated?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. At his kind eyes and genuine smile. At the way he waited patiently for my answer without pressure. "It's less complicated than it was," I said carefully. "Does that mean you might consider that coffee?" I thought about Greg, who never asked what I wanted. About Patricia, who treated me like property. About 3 years of being invisible in my own life. Then I thought about the past 3 months. Waking up free, working a job I enjoyed, living with my best friend, becoming myself again. "Yes," I said, surprising myself. "I'd like that coffee." Thomas's whole face lit up. "Really? How about Saturday?" "Saturday works." He left with his book, and I stood there smiling like an idiot. Dorothy noticed from across the store and gave me a knowing look. That Saturday, Thomas and I met at a small cafe near the bookstore. We talked for 3 hours about books and teaching and hiking and our families. He told me about his work with kids. I told him about my job at the bookstore, carefully avoiding the details of my past. He didn't push. He just listened and asked questions and made me laugh with his terrible jokes. When we left, he walked me back to Helen's apartment. "I had a really good time," he said. "Me too. Can we do this again?" "I'd like that." He smiled and walked away, and I floated up the stairs to the apartment. Helen was waiting with raised eyebrows. "Well, it was nice," I said, trying not to grin too wide. "Just nice." "Okay, it was really nice." We stayed up half the night talking about it, about how strange it felt to be treated with basic kindness, about how scary it was to think about trusting someone new, about how maybe, just maybe, I deserved good things. 4 months after I left the mansion, I got my first paycheck that didn't disappear into shared accounts. It wasn't much, barely enough to cover my share of rent and groceries, but it was mine. I took Helen out for lunch to thank her for everything. "You saved my life," I told her. "You saved your own life," she corrected. "I just gave you a place to land." 6 months after I left, Cousin Whitney posted something on social media. Not about me directly, but I saw it anyway because Helen showed me. It was a photo of Patricia looking exhausted in her kitchen, surrounded by takeout containers. The caption said, "Grandma's having a hard time adjusting to cooking for herself. Anyone know a good chef we can hire? Lol." The comments were not kind to Patricia. Maybe she shouldn't have treated her daughter-in-law like a servant. This is what happens when you take people for granted. Karma is real. I felt nothing looking at that photo. No satisfaction. No anger. Nothing. They were part of a life that didn't belong to me anymore. 7 months after I left, I moved into my own small apartment, 3 blocks from Helen. It was tiny, just a studio with barely enough room for a bed and a small table, but it was mine. Thomas helped me move my few belongings. Helen brought wine and pizza. We sat on the floor of my empty apartment and celebrated. "You did it," Helen said. "You're completely free now." She was right. I had my own place, my own job, my own life. Nobody controlled me. Nobody diminished me. Nobody made me feel small. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my quiet apartment. I made myself tea and curled up on my second-hand couch with a book. My phone buzzed, a text from Greg's number, somehow finding a way through again. "Please come back. I'm sorry. We can change." I stared at that message for a long moment. Then I typed my response. "I already changed. I became the person I was always meant to be. And that person doesn't include you. Don't contact me again." I blocked the number one final time. Then I deleted his contact completely. Erased him from my phone like he'd tried to erase who I was. I picked up my book and started reading. Outside my window, the city hummed with life. My new life. The one I'd chosen. The one I'd fought for. I was exactly where I was supposed to be.